I'm Stephen Thompson, the Lieutenant with the Valdosta Lowndes Regional Crime Lab here in Valdosta, Georgia. We're a department of the City of Valdosta under the Valdosta Police Department. So presently we're here at the Crime Lab, and we're great that you came here today to do this tour. We often offer a lot of tours for Valdosta State University, for the Lowndes County School System, and for the City of Valdosta as well. So most of you may have seen our building on Ashley Street. So let me tell you a little bit about the building and the history. We often, when we give a tour, we like to talk about our building. We're currently standing in the central receiving area, which we refer to as CR. We use a lot of acronyms and just some terminology here in the lab, so I'll try to remember to explain that to everybody along the way. Again, we're in the central receiving portion of our lab. This is a secured facility with cameras and audio, video, and the alarm company is actually right next door to us. Now, the history of our building here dates back to earlier in the 50s. I believe this lab here, when it was presently somewhere in 1950, when it was originally built, was one of the only Class 3 buildings here in the City of Valdosta. So because of its structure, it's often used as a more or less a fallout shelter or a fallback location for us during times of hurricanes, which we've had recently. We operate during those hours, and we allow the uniformed patrol officers of the Valdosta Police Department and any other agency to seek shelter here during that time. So we man it during those hours. The lab dates back to prior to 2010. Now, the building here, as we spoke of, has a unique history. It's been here for an extended amount of time. Some people here that have grown up in Valdosta may remember it as it was under other organizations, such as I think it was a Swanee Swifty store and maybe even a bank at one time. The concept for a lab began under the administration of Frank Simons, and then rolled over until the administration of Brian Childress, and then later now under Chief Leslie Manahan. Now, at that time, around 2010, the lab was just a concept or an idea, and it started over at the Valdosta Police Department. So the idea was to have a facility or have a place where the people of Valdosta and the citizens of Valdosta and Lowndes County could have their items of evidence and the work done here locally and not sent out to another organization. We were talking about time value of money, and so when we talk about that, we talk about having something here for the citizens and for the community that we can do here locally and keep stuff on the local level, which wins in the end. So the lab was a concept that began again under Frank Simons, and the original idea was to have uniformed patrolmen and detectives would check marijuana, and we're certified through the state of Georgia under the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in Atlanta, and they could check marijuana locally in each department, so it would be checked at the police department. Sometime around 2010, this property was purchased from the City of Valdosta from Valdosta State University. At that time, the building had been abandoned and it was closed up through a reconstruction, and it was outfitted as to what you see today. So again, we're in the central receiving section. Central receiving is where all the evidence comes and goes. Any other agencies or supporting agencies in our area come here. They set up an appointment with the young ladies that work here in the central receiving behind this glass, and they schedule that appointment. They deliver their evidence that they've collected. Now, this could be evidence that they've collected on the streets from their uniformed patrol officers, or it could be detectives as well. Now, we also offer crime scene work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, we're going to talk about those different disciplines. When I say discipline, what I'm referring to is the line of work, what these guys do. So the discipline would be the job. So of course, crime scene is one of them. Then we have latent print examination and identification, and then we have our firearms, and then we have the seized drugs and the blood alcohol tox. So we're going to see each of those sections today. But again, all that evidence that comes in from those other agencies that are in our area, which is throughout South Georgia. We're reaching as far out as to the coast now. We're reaching into North Florida as well. So any agency that's needing assistance, so we provide that to them. So we have the technology here. We have the background, the education for these scientists and these criminalists here that provide that for those agencies. But then we provide training for them as well. And then on top of all of that, what we provide is that expert testimony in court after the fact. So it all comes down to everybody working together. So what we have here is the uniform officer on the street, collecting evidence if it's not collected by the crime scene guys, then going through detectives, and then working up the line into the prosecution office, and it's coming through here, and we're providing that testimony as well. So it's everybody working hand in hand with each other. So it's all the agencies around. So we're just one little microcosm, one little cog in the wheel for everybody working together just to have one final outcome. Again, this is central receiving. We're in a secured facility, as I spoke of before. We have ballistic glass that keeps everybody protected here, and then this is our evidence vaults where evidence can be passed through to the girls in the back. They take that evidence in. That evidence is then going to be sent for prosecution. Scratch that. That evidence then is going to be sent for analysis. The guys down here on the working floor, and we're going to see that floor in just a minute. This building's about 20,000 square feet. Only about 10,000 of it's been fixed or is a working facility. We have another 10,000 square feet that to the front of the building that is for future development. Now this bottom floor that we're going to be going down is going to be the actual working floor. We refer to it as the dirty floor. Not that it's actually dirty, but that's where all the work takes place, and that's where all our evidence is at. The evidence is not allowed to go upstairs. It's checked out through a computer system. These guys take it from the vault and from these girls. It's electronically sealed, and then this evidence goes down and it's held in their temporary storage until they do the analysis, and then that evidence comes back to the vault. It's kept electronically in the computer, and then it's given back to that agency. So we don't store the evidence here. It only comes in, it's processed like a business, and that evidence goes out. In here in central receiving, we have some items we've collected. We have some crime scene stuff and some old law enforcement gear as well. We do a lot of tours, so we have STEM groups, like I said, from the schools that come through, and they often like to see some of the old items that we've had through law enforcement through the years, as well as some crime scene equipment as well. We're going to go now through the central receiving section and then down the hall to that working floor. Again, this is central receiving. We're short-staffed at the moment. A lot of our people, civilians included, are at home due to the current virus. Hopefully to come back to work very soon. We miss them. Over here is our vault, which is restricted access under lock and key and camera. This is where all the evidence is held temporarily before it is sent back out. And we're going to go down through the working hall. This is our main hall to our building. This goes down to latent print, the photo lab. We'll have firearms, and we'll have chemistry off to the side and the end of the morgue over here. And then also next door we have a full working bay for vehicles as well. We have various bags here for the guys that do the crime scene work. They have most of their gear on their vehicles, which you can see outside. But if there's ever a need for any other gear, they have go bags ready to go with cameras, video cameras, and all the items that they would need on the scene, especially protective gear. We have full respirator systems, filters, hoods, gloves, and crime scene tape. We'll go down here. We'll stop first in our photography lab. When certain items of evidence are needed to be photographed, they can be photographed on scene. But we also have a photo lab here that we can take when we're looking for fingerprints. So we need close-up pictures of items of evidence. Say it was a knife and you needed to take a picture of the fingerprint on the knife or the gun or blood. So we have a photo table that a camera is mounted on to take pictures of items of evidence. Currently our drone is sitting here. I'll speak of that for a moment. We are moving into a drone program. The drone program, this is a Phantom 4 with 4K camera. We use this on crime scenes now. We can use it on traffic fatalities as well. In the past, we had to utilize the Valdosta Fire Department to come out with a bucket truck, and so that our photographers could get into the truck and actually be raised in the air to take an overall picture. So through the use now of a drone, it makes it a whole lot easier for our guys just to toss this drone out and take a video of the scene. Now, we didn't just go out and buy any drone. There are different levels of that. Any person can go and purchase a drone, and they're considered a hobbyist. But because we are a public entity, there are certain laws and procedures that we have to follow under. So our guys currently, we have 2 criminalists here, and they have their FAA license for drone flight. So they went through the testing and the procedures, and they currently have their FAA license, and they operate these drones on the scene. This is just the controller for the drone. Also in the lab here, most people have probably seen on crime scene shows the use of different light sources for these guys. We call it an alternative light source, or an ALS. So you see the different colors of light, like orange and green. They're using on crime scenes to detect blood, semen, or any other fluids that may be found at a crime scene, such as a murder or possibly a sexual assault. So we have one full kit here, but we also have another full kit next door in our bays for processing vehicles. And these assist the criminalist in locating items of evidence at a scene. Now, if you remember from school, for instance, we can see the floor would appear to be clean. But if we turn the light off, and we're emitting this UV light source, and we'll try to do it with the door open and see, you may begin to notice different fluids. Now, most of these would possibly be chemicals, but this would be something that would be found at a crime scene. Then it would be sampled and tested. A swab would be taken. So you can see from this one source. Now, most of this, again, would be chemicals used to clean the floor. Now, I always tell the kids when they come in on the tours, well, which is the truth. That's where I spilled a Red Bull about 2 years ago. The floor's been cleaned several times, so that lets you know what's in Red Bull. But you can see it. It also, you can see the dust on my coat. And you can also see injuries or bruising and the blood flow patterns in the hand, which would show up as bruises. Now we'll move on down the hall to the latent print processing rooms. Now we have, as far as latent print, what we have is the dry labs and the wet labs. Now when I say dry lab, wet lab, what I'm referring to is dry would be for a powder. Now most people have seen that on crime scene shows where the guy holds a brush up, spins a brush, and puts the powder. What they're looking for at a crime scene would be latent prints. Latent prints are prints that can't be seen with the naked eye. So what we're doing is we're applying either a dry chemical or a wet chemical to enhance those. And what we're looking for is those friction ridges, because that's the detail that we need to find. So that's the key here, is to find those friction ridges to make that identification. If we can't see those, then we can't make an identification. So it's not every single time that that happens, and that you can find fingerprints at a crime scene. Let's say, for instance, you were at a home and it's very hot in South Georgia. So let's just say the humidity's high and it's about 100 degrees in the summer. And somebody grabs a doorknob and they're sweating and it slips as they're turning the knob. There will be print on here, but it won't be identifiable because those latent prints, which you can see from the tips of your fingers, and the girls will talk to you about that in a minute, is a slip. So you'll see that somebody had touched it. So another possibility then, of course, would be DNA. So when you hear this term being thrown around, touch DNA, this is where the criminalists would talk with the actual detectives on scene and say, I don't think I'm going to be able to get a good viable print from this to make an identification. So let's look at doing touch DNA. So there's where a swab would be taken. Most of the time you would think about something perfect would be with your palm laid on the glass. You can't see it now, but if I applied dust to that, you would be able to see it, and you would see those latent print and friction ridges that we're talking about. But how often is a criminal going to come up and give you the perfect print with no pressure? So let's see, we touch that. Let's see if I can actually raise one up real quick on that glass. Now we normally do these under the hood. This is where a piece of evidence will be brought in and it'll have an updraft because what we're dealing with is a powder. But since we applied that, we'll go over here and we'll just see if we can try to get one off because you saw me touch it. So now you can begin to see from the oils. So the fingerprint is actually the lipids and the fatty acids that are coming out of your hands. And we can also identify off of palms as well. So even with me touching it, you can still only see minor friction ridges in that area. Now, the examiner would then, or the criminalist would have to lift that print and send it to the girls down the hall, and we'll go down there and show you that section. And this is the dry lab portion. As far as the wet lab portion, this is through the use of chemicals that we have here at the lab. So various chemicals are used, again, to develop those prints, because we're looking for those friction ridges. One chemical we use is cyanoacrylate, which is, in layman's terms, is super glue. Very easy to use. Super glue, so we use scientific super glue. The super glue is heated. In this case, we use a light bulb and we use a tin. We place a tin cup in here, we place the super glue in the cup, it heats it, it turns it to a vapor. Now, I told you about fingerprints, and the fingerprint itself is made up of those oils. It's wet, it's moist, it's 99% moisture. So when the super glue heats, it's looking for that moisture. So you ever use super glue and you use plastic together, you see it forms that white crusty parts on the plastic. Well, what that is, it's attaching to that moisture where your fingers are touching. So it runs around the tank looking for whatever item of evidence you have in there. And in this case, we use this as an example. This is a coffee cup we put in there, and it makes a permanent mark on it. You can see here where the actual print has been touched, where somebody's thumb was actually on the print. And through this cup here, I can actually look at it, and under our loop, we can actually see the latent print ridges through that cup. And then that would be sent down the hall for that identification process as well. We use other chemicals in here as well. They're stored in a secure facility. Some of those are iodine, some of those are anhydrine and dye stains. They're used on paper. So if you had a ransom note or you had counterfeit bills, that could be done in here as well. So all of that takes place in this one room here, and this is our wet lab. So this is part, again, of the actual latent print section. This section here is our firearm section. This takes up the largest footprint in the lab. Now, like I said, our building is about 20,000 square feet with only about 10,000 square feet developed. But the firearms section holds that largest footprint because a lot goes on in here. We have several different sections in here. We are currently set up to have 2 firearms examiners. We have 3 NIBIN technicians that examine those shells. And then we have a ballistics tank in the back for firing and getting those examples. And then we have a full range in there as well. Also to include, we have a firearms library. But we're going to go in and we're going to see, I believe, criminalist Timothy Quimby is in here, and he's working on a NIBIN case now, which would be where you're matching the actual shell casings. Could be some found at a scene, and then you have your known and your unknown. So what we spoke of before with the fingerprints, you're always taking that unknown coming in our door, whether it be that fingerprint, that drug, that firearm, that bullet, and we're trying to find the known, and we're matching it, and we're giving back that expert scientific testimony. So let's go in and see if Tim's in here.
Good morning. Right now I'm entering a cartridge case into our brass track system. This is the first start of our correlation program, where this system will take photographs of the cartridge case and send that over to our match point system, which is this computer here. And this computer will bring up a list of potential matches to the cartridge case, such as the one I have going right here. And at this point, what I'll do is I'll see if I can find one that is a very close match. And if it is a match, I will notify the agency that submitted the item. As you can see here, there's multiple striations that match up. At this point, we'll consider it a lead, and I'll contact the submitting agency and let them know that there's a potential match, and then it'll be sent off for further microscopic examination.
Again, we're in the firearms section, and this is where we're set up. We have 2 firearms microscopes. These are comparison microscopes that the firearms examiners would use, where they're actually matching those bullets. And this is something that they would do in this section. The firearm would come in, and we're going to go back in the back. This is where they would fire the actual weapon system into a tank of water to recover a bullet or a projectile, and then they could match those lands and grooves on that as well. So we'll go that way. This is our Firearms Library. This is used for reference materials. This is going to be in our Projectile Recovery Lab, which is the water tank area. We have criminalist Michael Cartret here, and he's going to talk to you for a minute and give you an example of what it would be to test fire one into the tank.
This is, like Lieutenant Thompson said, this is our projectile recovery room. This is actually a water tank where we do the majority of our test fires. It's just full of water, and on this end here you'll see what looks like a net. This is actually used to capture the cartridge cases as they're ejected out of the gun, if the gun does in fact eject. Revolvers don't typically do that. But this is where we'll recover if we are conducting test fires to be entered into our NIBIN system. And typically, most of our test fires conducted here are handguns. There are some limitations to this setup. Anything over 3,500 feet per second is a little too fast and a little bit too much power for this setup to be safely shot. And when we have guns or weapons that we have to shoot that do not meet the parameters of this setup, we will typically shoot them inside of our indoor range. What I have here is a Glock Model 21 45 automatic, or ACP. This is actually one of the guns from our Firearms Library that I'm going to test fire for you today. And we have two projectiles. We have a hollow point and a full metal jacket. Normally, when we do test fires, we'll actually mark and label these projectiles, the cartridges themselves, so that we can keep up with which projectile came from which cartridge case itself. And we'll load them up into the magazine, and then we'll take the weapon, and we will come to this end. And of course, we have our eye protection and our ear protection here, and we'll put that in place real quick, and then we'll get a test fire done for you. This is, like Lieutenant Thompson said, this is our projectile recovery room. This is actually a water tank where we do the majority of our test fires. It's just full of water, and on this end here you'll see what looks like a net. This is actually used to capture the cartridge cases as they're ejected out of the gun, if the gun does in fact eject. Revolvers don't typically do that. But this is where we'll recover if we are conducting test fires to be entered into our NIBIN system. And typically, most of our test fires conducted here are handguns. There are some limitations to this setup. Anything over 3,500 feet per second is a little too fast and a little bit too much power for this setup to be safely shot. And when we have guns or weapons that we have to shoot that do not meet the parameters of this setup, we will typically shoot them inside of our indoor range. What I have here is a Glock Model 21 45 automatic, or ACP. This is actually one of the guns from our Firearms Library that I'm going to test fire for you today. And we have two projectiles. We have a hollow point and a full metal jacket. Normally, when we do test fires, we'll actually mark and label these projectiles, the cartridges themselves, so that we can keep up with which projectile came from which cartridge case itself. And we will load them up into the magazine, and then we'll take the weapon, and we will come to this end. And of course, we have our eye protection and our ear protection here. And we'll put that in place real quick, and then we'll get a test fire done for you. What we'll do is we'll place the firearm into the netted area. First, we'll close the lid to this shooting tank, because we don't want water to get in. So we'll close the lid, make sure it's secure, locked in place. Then once your gun is inside the net, I'll insert a magazine with the two cartridges and chamber around. Fire in the hole. Fire in the hole. Then we'll remove the magazine. Physically make sure that the weapon is unloaded and safe. We can remove it from the netting here. And you can see these are the two cartridge cases that are left. The bullets have been fired out. And then we'll come over here. We'll open the lid and we'll actually recover the projectiles themselves. have this rod that has some plumber's putty on the end so that we can actually capture the projectile. This is our 45 ACP hollow point. And we have a 45 full metal jacket. And then these projectiles will actually be, typically when we do test fires, we only test fire the full metal jackets because you can get a little bit more detail. You can actually see the rifling from the inside of the barrel. And this will go into evidence along with the actual cartridge casing, which is the portion that we enter into the nibin. And now I'll take you into our indoor range and show you how we operate our remote firing system. We'll go just right down here. This is our indoor range, as Lieutenant Thompson showed earlier. This is one of our shooting stands. This is a pneumatic. It operates off of an air system. There's an air tank underneath. But if we have a gun or a pistol or any type of firearm that comes in that we don't feel is safe to properly test fire ourselves, we feel like it could possibly, explode or come apart, we'll put it into this. This is another gun that we have from our library. This is a Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum, and it is unloaded. And basically what we'll do is we'll mount this in here into our stand. And normally, we'll try to get this all lined up. Sometimes it's a little difficult. And if you just want to step over here, I'll show you. So on this side, we have the controls for the system, and it has a remote that we actually, what we'll do is we'll actually take this, and it's got a fairly long cord, and we'll exit the room, and we can actually fire this weapon outside of the room so we don't have to be present. So if it does have a catastrophic failure, we can be safe. Basically what you'll do is we arm the system, and it gives you a signal, and then we have a key that you turn. And of course, again, this is not loaded, so I'm just going to do a dry fire scenario to show you how it operates. You'll press the button and hold, and it fires the weapon. And we'll put it back on safe, and then we will remove the weapon. And then at this point, we would be able to recover the actual cartridge case from the weapon. If it were a semi-automatic pistol or something that ejects the cartridge, we'd usually put something in place to be able to capture it so we wouldn't have to go digging around on the floor too much. And that's how we test fire weapons that are not safe to shoot by hand.
We're back in the main hall here at the crime lab, and we're going to continue down the hall. Since we do offer so many tours, we like to take photographs of our groups that come through. We often put them on our board. They come from various schools in the area, Hayhira, Lowndes Middle, the college as well. And in the summers, we've offered some programs sometimes during body recoveries and outside scenes. This is going to be our north lobby. Across the way here you can see our actual vehicle bay and processing area for vehicles. We can store up to 4 vehicles in there. We have a full lift system for the vehicles as well. That used to be an old gas station that was converted into the bay at about the same time the lab was, around 2010. This is our morgue. We can hold up to 4 bodies here from a crime scene, or bodies that need to be sent for an actual autopsy. We have 4 coolers to hold the bodies, which are evidence, and then those are released through a carrier, and they are driven for autopsy and Macon at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, where the medical examiner is. We talked about that latent print or that fingerprint examination to get that print. So we collected that print, and we showed you in here how we would collect one, because we're looking for that friction ridge and that identification, and we can do it in the dry lab as well. So now let's say we've collected one, and we send it down the hall for these guys and girls to make that examination. We have Crimulus Finney and Crimulus Haddix both here that work in this area, which is the latent print examination room, which is APHIS. They're currently in here working on cases at this time. This is Crimulus Finney. She's in the actual APHIS room, and she's making those identifications that you can see. We talked about those fingerprints, and we talked about loops and arches and whorls that people's prints are made of, and those are lines of identification that we're looking for here. And we talked about that known and the unknown. So the unknown would be that latent, and we're making that match off of there. This is Crimulus Haddix, and she's working on a case as well. And maybe you can explain a little bit to us as to what you're looking at.
I'm doing right here is I'm trying to make a comparison from a print that was submitted to us. The first thing I'll do is I'll analyze this print. I'll look at the flow of the ridges right here. This is called friction ridge skin. I'll start the comparison on this suspect right here, and I keep going back and forth from points that I find right here on this unknown print to the known print. And I keep going back and forth until I feel like I have enough information to determine whether or not this is an identification or not.
It's been great that you came here today to see everything that we do here. We're going to go outside to show you the drone and how it works. We showed you that earlier. You've seen every discipline here at the lab today. And again, it was great that you stopped by and everybody got to see what we do here behind these walls, because we have no windows. So everybody always wonders what's going on inside this building. So now you got to see the magic. Thanks again.